My wife disappeared nearly 2 months ago. On Monday, April 5th, I 31 male was volunteering when I received a text from my bank that $3,000 had been taken out of our checking account. I rushed home to find that my wife 30 female had trashed our apartment, cherry-picked what items she wanted and was gone. Texts and calls weren't going through. There was no note. A close friend of mine messaged her asking where she was, and she responded with, "You can tell my name, that I'm fine, and that I need some space, and that I'm sorry for hurting him." Since then, I've tried my absolute best to understand what the heck happened. Some background. My wife and I were together for almost 4 years. We were married July 3rd, 2020. We met while she was working at a Lush in August 2017, and we were pretty much instantly infatuated with each other. We were definitely limerent. She had recently abandoned a 6-year-long relationship and was living with another guy. As she described, the old boyfriend was apparently an abusive alcoholic. She was also regularly cheating on him and had cultivated a relationship with a man who lived in Scotland. Scotland guy was pretty clearly not interested in her. So when I came along, she eagerly abandoned both the guy she was living with and the guy in Scotland in favor of me. At the time, I told myself it made sense, because I was offering more than anybody had offered in a while. I was desperately trying to build my life up at the time, so I was working full-time as well as completing a bachelor's degree. She came into the relationship with a lot of credit card debt and almost immediately financed a breast augmentation. So within the first 6 months we had almost $20,000 in debt. This was new for me. We got along amazingly well despite it. The first couple of years of our relationship were difficult because of the debt and trying to establish permits. But we persevered. There was abuse from both sides. We were open and only ever seemed to involve other women. We also loved each other very hard. I've had several relationships and I've never had one like this, where we were both so fervently in love and invested in one another, but also let ourselves get away with some pretty selfish behavior. She began studying for med school and taking on a lot of new obligations. She was a medical scribe for several years, maintained a 4.0 GPA, and we both regularly volunteered. On top of that, we traveled often, visiting her for mother-in-law New York, Vietnam to work with disabled children, California several times. We both felt very in love and very empowered. We were very eager to be married and start having kids. We had so much fun together. It was mind-boggling. It's tough to condense 4 years into a Reddit post, but that's the gist of it. I learned a lot about her in the time we were together. She was extremely intelligent. She received a full-ride scholarship for the Midwest State University where she lived. After about a year of school, she started failing, lost the scholarship and dropped out. At this point she went to go live with a house full of men in Atlanta. She explained to me that she went because they said they'd take care of me. It didn't work out. Instead, she started camming. She paid the brother-in-laws with camming and decided to move into a 1-bedroom apartment with a guy that she insists was not her boyfriend. When things started inevitably going south with him, she started conversing with another guy through a Pokemon forum. He invited her to come live with him, also stating that he'd take care of her. So, she told the other guy she was leaving and moved to Arizona. This is the boyfriend she cheated on constantly. He was 10 years her senior. During this relationship, she cultivated a relationship with the man in Scotland. She even went to see him while she was with the boyfriend. She and the boyfriend eventually moved to Washington after he was laid off. She gives him an STD due to her affairs. One day she packs a suitcase and moves in with, you guessed it, a guy that said he'd take care of her. The way she described their relationship was like an insect and a spider. This is where we meet. While she's working part-time at Lush, she tells me she loves me within days. I do the same. I learn all I can about her almost immediately, including her tumultuous history. She very much acknowledged how foolish it all was. She seemed desperate for change, and so was I. I think that's part of the reason we got along so well, and for so long. In February of last year, she secretly set up getting an apartment through a friend. I couldn't understand why, and we talked about it. Apparently there were some things about our relationship she wasn't happy with. I had no idea, so we talked. She felt better and cancelled plans. A couple of months later, and she doesn't want to show me her camera roll. Apparently she had been talking to the Scotland guy again and had paid nearly 5,000 in credit cards to get a different apartment in Seattle. She was asking if she could visit him, but he said no. She'd been sending him nudes. We talked again. I couldn't understand what was happening. I started to realize how passive aggressive she was, how well she hid things that bothered her, and that ultimately she had learned from her parents that when things get uncomfortable or tough, you talk to everyone except your partner, and then you leave. Ultimately, she didn't make into med school, so we lost that path we'd been working for. I'm desperately in love with her at this point, and looking at this like it's nothing we can't overcome if we both want to. She fervently agrees. We started therapy and got married. We seem to be communicating well. Last August, I visited some for mother-in-law about an hour away from where we lived. When I got home, she was gone and left a poetic note that she typed on a typewriter about how all she ever wanted was to give me her whole heart, and that I said she needed to be protected, and that this was her doing just that. We were planning to move in 2 days. I managed to get a hold of her through emails, and we met up. She apologized again, said she left because of how I reacted when she spilled chocolate mother-in-law, which was to snap at her to pull a blanket out of the puddle before she grabbed paper towels. At this point, I had developed some pretty severe trauma and PTSD surrounding her absconding. One October morning, after we moved to a major city, I woke up around 9 AM to her standing over the bed. "I'm leaving," she says. I ask why. Panicked. I literally never knew what to expect anymore. Apparently it's the way I carry myself. I empathized, reiterated that I literally had no idea, and was more than happy to do what I could. She clearly felt better, but at that point, her friends were already outside waiting to pick her up. She took the train back home a couple of days later, after shaving her head. About a month after that, I came home from volunteering, and she was gone. 900 taken out of checking. A note was on the table that she had gone to California. I called her and we talked. She said she just wanted a short break, that she was house sitting for a friend and would be back in a couple weeks. I understood but explained this crossed a major boundary. Taking a vacation is fine, but you have to talk to me, right? I couldn't really accept that she had done this, so I gave her the choice between either coming back or staying gone. She came back. This is where things get different. She finally gets a regular job, working at a school as an assistant teacher, full-time with benefits. The first job like that she'd ever had. She seems to love it. We are saving money. I've now entered graduate school. We are living in a major city, and she starts a new program to get a second bachelor's in 2 years in computer science. Months go by, and we seem happy as can be, except she started hiding things from me. Small things. Smoking weed. Routes she'd take home from work. Her feelings. You name it. I had grown accustomed to asking her, "Will you be here when I get back?" in fear of her disappearing again. I often had nightmares about it. On weekends I'd wake up and call her name to make sure she responded. On weekdays I'd look around to make sure she hadn't moved out in the middle of the night. I communicated my feelings often. I went out of my way to do nice things or try to make her happy however I could think to do so. I had always sort of kept the house together, so I continued doing that and cooking meals. She'd get defensive but calm down. So long as I stuck to iMessages and stayed calm, it would always take about 45 minutes before she relaxed enough to talk about things. She started going to therapy. One day I asked if she was hiding anything from me, and she said no, which I knew was a lie because petty cash was missing. When I pushed her, she admitted she took it to buy joints which she smoked at work. All I said was I was tired of being lied to. She asked if we were meeting at the gym or not. I asked if that was her top priority. She asked again, and I responded with sociopath. She didn't come home. Around 10:30 PM, she finally showed up. She was drunk and started packing a bag. I pleaded with her to talk to me. She asked me what I'd do if she didn't talk to me. I told her I'd be scared and sad. She told me, "Your feelings aren't my response, brother-in-law." and left. She texted me that this was a long time coming and that I'm not a sociopath. The next morning I hadn't heard anything. I reached out to say I loved her, ask her plan, etc. She leaves me on read. A couple hours later I reach out again. This time I communicate that I feel abused. She tells me she's moving back to her home state. I later learned that she was on the phone with the guy for 5 hours the previous night. That when she didn't come home, she had called him. She was on the phone with him constantly, or texting, including being in bed next to me. She tells me that she has already put in her 2 weeks at her job and she was just planning on disappearing without saying anything. We both cry a lot. I suppose rather foolishly. I again start doing what I can to make this thing work. After a couple days, she tells me she got her job back and has changed her mind. That she very much loves me and knows she has a good thing here. I continue giving 150%. She seems thrilled. She's more affectionate, reciprocating well, communicating. I keep it up. About 4 days before she left, we are using her phone to take a picture and I see a nude I didn't get. It was the most recent photo she took. I immediately knew she was cheating again. I sat up, sighed, and didn't say anything. Instead, she started the conversation. She apologized, explained it was a one-off thing, and that she'd delete the number. I explained I was still committed and was going to see this through. She told me I'm a great partner and there's a lot she could learn from me. Did a lot to reassure me everything was fine. From sex, to gifts, to words of affirmation. I was sad and betrayed but gave in. It's sort of crazy to think that there's nothing I wouldn't do for her. The day she left we made dinner plans. She asked me to pick her up some things from Costco. Instead I came home and she was gone. All I had was that message. I need some space. About a week later. I want to talk, but I'm not ready. Also, you're not blocked on anything. I've had my phone on airplane mode. Sorry, I was reaching out a lot to try and understand what the heck was going on. I still had a ton of her stuff and our brother-in-laws were still debiting from the account. A week after that, she coldly reaches out to tell me she's finding herself. I'm finding myself. My name. I've been with a lot of people who have tried to do that for me, so I took myself away so I can do it all by myself. Eventually, I check phone records and the affair becomes obvious. I get on a plane to Indiana. Her mother-in-law says they haven't heard from her and don't know where she is. She's Maya on social media and her phone has been off for a month at this point. Here I'm still so desperately in love. I start digging after the trip to Indiana and I find all the details. It's a guy we used to joke about how hot he is. He lives in LA. I ask my building manager if she saw my wife. She says she did, and that she said she was going to LA. Call it denial or confusion. But I couldn't comprehend this. We talk again, each time through FB Messenger. She apologizes, says she wants me in her life, but that she wants to go it alone for a little while. I ask about the affair, and it's radio silence. Her mom starts messaging me, tells me my wife never plans on speaking to me again. So to go through her, which I absolutely will not do. Suddenly she's active on social media again. She went to Vegas with the guy, buying lingerie, lots of Zai pictures, getting high nearly constantly, daily. She's living with him in LA and sleeping on a mattress on the floor. She becomes insanely cruel, making Reddit posts saying I was abusive and she regrets saying I do. Her unemployment checks start showing up in our old account before I closed it down. She refuses to work with me in any aspect. It truly came full circle. It's the exact cycle she's been perpetuating ever since she left home. It feels stupid to say this, but I cannot believe it happened to me, too. She described all of her prior partners as terrible people and I believed her. I suppose she's doing the same with me now. It feels tragic. Too much to overcome. I suppose we could have had a really good thing if we had gotten our shit together. Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing for more videos.